We are on the cusp of MFL Season 5, which, make no mistake about it, is going to be the biggest season yet for this Football Manager game. But one of the most highly contested topics that I see in group chats and on the timeline here, there, and in the comment section everywhere regarding preparations for your squad for Season 5 is player progression. Is a player too good to stay into your team? Should you loan them out? And, really all the permutations and all the implications of, maxing out a player's potential so they actually become a better player for you to either use or sell into the market, that sort of thing, or by keeping them in your squad and using the better player against the field to ultimately grab yourself some success. In the video today, we're going to go through the white paper, the actual mechanics of how progression works on MFL, and I'm going to use a few examples that I'm a first owner of, guys I've had in my club throughout the past 4 seasons to show you guys a number of examples of, things that you need to keep in the front of your mind when making these decisions, and really what is the be-all and end-all of making this decision. If you are brand new to MFL, the Football Manager open network game that is really taking the internet by storm, and you haven't yet opened up your account yet, there's a link in the description in this video and in the pinned comment that will get you the best beginner bonuses possible. By clicking on that link, you do support me and all the content here at the channel, so I'm very, very grateful if you do so. If you get stuck, if you've got any questions, there's tons of beginner content on the channel that I'll link at the end of this one that you can catch as well. And if you do get stuck, if you've got any questions, jump into the comment section, of course, and I'll come and sort you out. But I know this is a video that a lot of ML fans, scouts, managers, players around the world will be eagerly waiting to get their teeth into so they can refine their decision making. So yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, when you're on playmfl.com, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the main homepage, you'll see here the link to the white paper itself. The white paper has all of the mechanics in the game from absolutely everything that you could possibly want to know. And if there is any changes and any developments in the platform mechanically, this is where they're updated. And under game mechanics, the player development tab is one of the must-read tabs for any MFL player or manager constructing their squad, managing their agency, their HQ, as it were. And we're going to take you through the main parts of this so that we all are on the same page and we've all got the same understanding of what we're talking about here. So the main components, the player progression system in MFL is designed to simulate the natural development and career trajectory of football players. This system uses a combination of training, match performance and inherent player potential to determine how players improve over time. Here are the key components. The first one is potential itself. Now, this is an attribute that is assigned to every player and it is kept a mystery. And along with their longevity, you'll see this on their player profile page as just under as a question mark. This is hidden in the blockchain of the NFT when it's issued, and MFL, yourself, no one will ever really know until their career finishes what their potential maximum rating could be, or their longevity, how long they'll play their actual career for. Now, we have a guideline here of, on average, how many players will be generated where the difference between their average score and their potential future score, their optimal score, their peak potential, is in between these different bandings here. So for someone to go up by plus 16, so if they started off as a 50 rated card to go up to being a 66 rated card, there's only 2% of those kind of players in and around the game in circulation. And as you can see, a guy that starts off at 50, then later becomes 51 or 52 is about 20% of the game, and then so on and so forth. You can see with the rest of this table. Now, it is roughly, because there is so many other factors that do go into this as well. This example is for players aged between 24 and 25. Now, in specific cases, there is the potential that the overall and the potential gap far exceeds these averages. In other words, although the chances are quite slim, a common player could become a legendary player, and again, there's unspecified percentage chance odds of that happening. It would need to be a bit of a unicorn situation, as it were. The figures in the above table are based on a player who starts between 24 and 25, and everything else is quite, example based. Now, the first thing that determines when a player will reach their maximum potential is their prime age. This is something that's been somewhat recently introduced on MFL in the grand scheme of things, but this is generated once randomly and cannot change. Also, like the potential attribute, it is hidden and the value is never visible. The prime age is 26, but this can vary based on the initial age of the player. The charts below show probability distribution of players' prime age for 16 and 24-year-old players. So just as a base example, if someone does start off at roughly 16, there is a very high chance that their prime age will be circa 26. There's a much lower chance that a 16-year-old's prime age could be 30 or 31, for example. If they're generated at 24, there's a very high probability that their prime age will be 28. And you can see how the graphs are kind of laid out here. Defining a prime age for players adds realism by mirroring peak performance seen over real-world football as they grow and they mature across the game, of course. And the below chart demonstrates that even if they have the same age, so they all start off at 18, they've all got the same potential, the same overall, players will have different, I was going to say character arcs there, progression arcs when their prime age is different. Note that in most cases, players will fully realise their potential, fully realise it by age 32, because as you've seen here, for the prime age, it almost certainly guarantees they should reach 80%. So when you feel a player is at the absolute peak of their career, you've maybe got a little bit more progression, a little bit more of improvement to go as they kind of come in off peak age. And regardless of what that is, 20, 24 or 30 is highlighted in this example graph here. By the time they get to 32, all progression should be in the book. And again, you can see a player here whose prime age could be 20. You know, if they're generated at 18 years of age, we go back to the 16-year-old example, very low chance that their prime age would be that early, but it's not impossible. Some players will do that. And as you can see with progression, they will very quickly get to that 76 mark, and then for the rest of their career, there's not really much more else to go on. And for the players that have prime ages a little bit further on, in this example, the red line and the yellow line, as you can see, it's much more of a gradual kind of incline towards hitting that prime age before then catching the last bit of progression before retirement. Another interesting example involves two players, both starting at the age of 18, overall 60. Player A has a potential of 80 and player B has a potential of 70. Due to their differing prime ages, 24 years old for player A and 20 for player B initially progresses faster early in their career. However, after reaching his prime age, player B's progression stagnates, whereas player A continues to improve and ultimately becomes the better player. And again, I think when you think about the potential hidden value, that which is undetermined, randomly assigned, and it is set when the card is made alongside their prime age. These are two massive factors that are completely out of our control and completely unknown when it comes to player management and really trying to work out, you know, if this is a guy that you're going to be stifling their potential by holding them, and will always be at the front of your minds for how do you maximise potential. Now, those are the two main kind of primary factors, and then mixed in amongst that, the mortar in between the bricks is kind of everything that I was just discussing there, everything we've got control of. You know, how good is the squad they train in? How well do they play? What level do they play at? What level of opposition? All that stuff is kind of detailed here in the XP progression, or the XP distribution section of the progression chart here. But this graph likes to show different paths, different career trajectories with the XP influence on top of the prime age and the hidden overall potential that we were just chatting about there. And again, we've got further examples, breakdown by statistic of these sorts of players in this setting and how it can go very, very differently for some of them, where they can get as much as a plus 24 in one statistic in some areas, whereas some players generally are, like, over the entire career don't even have that many that break into double digits by comparison. So everyone is totally different. Not everyone has the same potential. Players earn XP through training and participating in matches, and we'll go through that in a bit more detail here as well. So the first thing you get from matches is you get base XP. Matches account for 50% of it, and these are the base percentages of, you know, the available XP that they will capture, they will absorb into the card, into the player, based on the amount of matches that they play across a season for you or anyone you loan them out to, alongside what comes alongside that with training as well. And as you can see, for an important player that reaches like cup finals and plays many, many matches, they can have exceptional seasons and they can get even more XP as a result. Whereas guys that are fringe-based, rotation-based players, they're not going to get the same maximum XP capture that you would have maybe thought or imagined. The amount of XP a player receives is adjusted based on their match rating. Players with high match ratings get bonus XP, while those with low match ratings have a penalty. Players cannot receive negative XP by playing in a match. It just reduces the amount of XP they would receive. So let's say they were on to get 100 XP points. If their season average match rating was as low as 3, they would only get 67. But if their average match rating was 10, they would get 135, as an example. So the actual match performance is a big driver here. Actual performance on the pitch. Are they scoring goals? Are they a part of a winning team? And are their scores, are their statistics in match, their match rating reflecting their influence on the pitch. And then for training, players are included in regular training by being contracted to a team and just working on their own skills here through the daily training sessions throughout the season. Training contributes to their overall growth and development significantly. Now, there's a little footnote here that initially there is a single automated training mode available. However, they're really excited at the idea of opening up new doors thanks to training, and this is going to be iterated as time goes on, so stay tuned for developments on that. Players must be signed to a club in order to gain XP training and progress. The effectiveness of training is impacted by the players overall relative to their teammates. So if you've got one guy that's way better than everyone else, their progression from training is going to be diminished compared to if the squad was well balanced, or if it's a weaker player playing and training with better players, for example. It kind of flips on its head for those ones, as well as if their energy gets below 60%, which is quite significant. And then we've got a breakdown on the talent gap here. So this is about match penalty for the teammates the opposition are playing against, as well as training, and we've got a full breakdown for it here. Again, you cannot accrue negative XP, and so yeah, if a player is rated, let's just say they're rated at 78, and the overall, like, of all the rest of your players is 70, the difference there is 8. That means for their match XP, they receive a 28% penalty, and their regular training bonus is going to be hit by 86%. So they lose 14%. The penalty is 14. Two graphs kind of on the opposite end of the scale there, denoting that. The XP from the training comes from their overall compared to the average overall of the top 16 players. So if you do have some fringe players that are weaker, they don't affect the average overall value of the best 16, then it's not really anything to worry about. Similarly to match XP, the adjustment, the system evaluates the difference between a player's overall and the team's overall. So if your overall average rating for the team is like the 70 and your guy's 78, that's when that kind of thing kicks in. If a player's overall is significantly higher than the team's average, they will experience a reduction in training XP. This encourages them to train with better divisions, better players, that sort of thing. As you can see from the table below, the penalty increases as the difference grows. When the overall difference reaches 20, a 50% reduction is applied. Yeah, so the bigger that gap, the more severe or the slower their progression will be as a result. We then have aging as well. We've kind of touched on that already. The retirement age, which is also unknown and undetermined until you get that 3-year warning, has a factor on this as well. Reaching a higher overall in rarity changes. The higher a player's overall, the harder it is to progress further. And this is something, again, that's really important to flavour into this. Because I think, like, if you've got a younger player and they're rated at like 85, you think, oh wow, the chances of him getting to 99 is much higher because he's really young and already amazing. But the higher they already are, the more XP it requires to break through, and the better the conditions have to be, and they also actually need to have the predetermined potential to reach that 99. You know, if their max is 86 and they're 85 already, then you can do all this to your blue in the face, they're never going to break through 86. But this is interesting because although all this stuff is predetermined and unchangeable, what happens if a player misses XP? Right? So missing XP delays a player's progression, meaning his prime age will also be pushed back. If a player misses a season's worth of XP, for example, his development will be delayed by a season. At some point, if too much XP is missed by not playing for multiple seasons and age-related XP penalties, it can make it harder for them to fulfill their potential. By combining training, match performance and inherent player potential, we ensure that each player's growth feels organic and varied. So it's not that there's, like I say, a set thing where every player's going to go up by +5 and that sort of thing. And by going through this, I wanted to just highlight to you guys, I'll link this page in the description of the video if you want as well, the actual mechanics that go around here, because I see a lot of people really making their decision on the basis of, oh, I don't want to stifle my player's progression, and oh, like that guy's too good to play in the Spark division, or I'm in Ice with a guy that good. You know, you open up a pack, you get a great player, and your first thought isn't, how do I make this work? Can I put him in my team? It's more, oh well, I can't use him, and I don't want to hold, you know, so I'll put him out on loan or I'll sell him. And yeah, that's a great decision a lot of the time, but certainly not every time. Now, like I mentioned in the tip-off to the video, I've got a few examples in my own club that I think can illustrate a number of the different situations and outcomes that are detailed here in the white paper, but having real-world examples rather than these random player examples might make it a bit easier for you guys to think about the potential decisions that we're making with our squad construction. The star player for FC Barcelona over the last 4 or 5 seasons has of course been Rocket Man Hamada Nasser. Now, I have loaned Hamada Nasser out this year, like a fair few divisions above me, to try and push him over the edge from being 84 to 85. And I think about this guy every time this discussion comes up around XP players and all the rest of it. He's 84 rated. He's been 84 rated since I packed him at age 23, and he's played 4 seasons for me already. His progression so far has been absolutely minimal. The only thing he's progressed on over the last couple of seasons is 2 points on defence in the last year. Every other statistic has not moved a jot. And normally these observations include things like wants to play against better opponents, wants to train with better players, and that has definitely stifled and hindered his potential growth to this point already. But he has played 4 seasons for me. He has had exceptional match ratings, been scoring phenomenal amounts of goals, and he's moved up the levels. I've had a better team going around him, and he's had like no sniff of progression. So there will be a little bit of proof in the pudding for Hamad Nasser as an individual. Now age 27, I'm hoping this is kind of somewhat close to his prime age, because he has been gathering XP, and hopefully with one big season, a few divisions above me, he can crack that 85 barrier, and then we can revisit his future ahead of season 6. But just because this guy was 84 rated doesn't mean that he couldn't go and score 25 goals in 10 games in the Ice League, I beg your pardon, and in the Stone playoffs to get me promoted. In my first division, my first season in Stone, we didn't do so good, of course, but 15 league matches for Hamada, 7 cup games, we went to the quarter-final. Average ratings really through the roof, good goal to game ratio, not as great as the season before obviously. And then again, a second season in Stone with an Iron playoff, great match performances, tons of goals, tons of minutes, key player, important player. And then last year in Iron, again the same, 19 games in the league, 27 goals, an absolute monster. So just because he was amazing and I'm playing him with lower average players doesn't mean that he isn't still quality, doesn't still win me matches, and still isn't an effective piece of the puzzle, an effective part of the machine. Have I slowed down his progression? Potentially, as I say, we'll see that throughout this season for Asuncion and the Silver Division, I think they're in this year. So we'll see what progression he's got. But make no mistake about it, he has been gathering XP this entire time. Now, has he gathered enough XP to go from 84 to 85? No, because we already know the higher the level is, the more XP is required. And to tier break, to go from being, in this case, blue to purple, it's going to take even more to break through the colours, as it were, to break through the tiers. But he's been getting good quality match XP, he's been getting good training XP, so that I don't think the gap in overall averages has been, probably has been quite big for him, in fact, early on, and less so over time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see on this one. But even if you do keep a guy and use him, it's not as if you're going to be missing out. You'll actually get results on the pitch if they're actually good enough. I built the team around this guy, and if they are that much better, that's the way to go about it, obviously. Another example we've got of this, which is slightly different, is Emmanuel Lecoq. Now, we packed this guy as a 20-year-old striker in Season 1. He played all of Season 1 for us as well, was our top goal scorer. Or was he actually? No, Hamada scored a few more, I think, didn't he? With only 10 matches. But all the same, he was our main man. He performed really well, and he has done so for the last 4 seasons across these different divisions. He's played in Ice, he's played in Stone, and he's also played in Iron, scoring goals and performing moderately well as his seasonal average. If you zoom into individual matches, he has had moments where he's excelled and scored doubles and been a match winner in big matches against tough opposition, as well as teams towards the bottom of the pitch. Now, his progression has been slightly different. He has actually progressed, and he progressed quite quickly in the Ice Division. So in the Ice Division as a 74 rated striker, and again, this was my first season, so I probably didn't realise the significance of this, but he went to being 75 in that first season, playing every week, being the main man. And you can see a lot of his progression happened in that first season and then in that first section of Season 2, and really since then he's not moved on at all. The rest of the team has got better, we've moved up the divisions as well. He is a young guy, so has he maybe reached his potential already at 21, 22? Not impossible. Is it foreseeable that at 24 years of age he is still 3 seasons away from his prime age? Again, yet to be seen, and from what we've seen on those graphs, that's quite a likely thing, that his prime age has not came to roost yet. And if I wind back to his first season in Ice as being like a way too good striker for the league, he got all the progression that he's had so far in that division. In the top end of Stone, when we won the league, he didn't progress, and being in Iron, he's not progressed at all. So playing at a higher level with better players around him and still performing pretty well himself. He was, again, in the opening stage of the season, top goal scorer, if memory serves me right. Hamada Nasser had a real second half comeback where he really got up the scoring charts and won the Golden Boot. But again, not a linear path. Just because the team's got better, we've been winning and getting promoted, hasn't seen an acceleration in his growth. If anything, it was at the lower level as being a dominant force is where his progression really happened for him initially. And then there's Rock at the back, Edward Wagner, who we packed as a 26-year-old centre-back. And again, this happened in Season 1, so it maybe I was maybe a wee bit none the wiser that he went from being a 73 rated centre-back in the Ice Division in Season 1, went to being 75. He progressed massively. He did the tier breaker as well. And at 26, his prime age is probably quite close to where we've already been. That 28, 29 that's got him to be a 70A rated defender, because he has just kind of plateaued over the last season where, again, we've been up a division, he's been playing all the time, and his match performances have held, so these performances have been in the higher divisions and have been consistently on par, that 7 plus kind of mark. And as you can see where the dots are, the majority of his progression here really happening towards the back end of that, really in the early stage of Season 2, really, isn't it? Not as much for the early part of Season 1 outside of physical and dribbling, which make up the biggest part, of course, of a defender. And at 30 years of age, we don't have the retirement notice, so it's quite feasible to see Edward Wagner is going to be at least 34. So we might get a little bit of progression this year after, if we imagine his peak is something like 28, 29. Imagine his peak was 31. And then we have Porfirio Tolentino. Now, we packed this guy at the beginning of Season 1, and he was our main playmaker. Great match averages, of course. High assist count. Used to take all my set pieces until last season. It felt like the Iron Division was a step too high. But this guy has progressed not a jot, despite playing in all these different divisions with an ever increasingly better team, winning matches and playing against better opposition. And again, like he genned in at 24, it's reasonable to assume his peak age is something like 28, 29, but his progression has absolutely been non-existent. And that makes me think maybe his potential, like what did he generate out as, a 70 rated card? Maybe his potential is 71, and that's him done and dusted with progression now for the rest of his career. Or maybe he's still got another little bit to go. And again, the main thing I've tried to highlight with Tolentino, because he started off as being a 70, so we mentioned before that if they're a higher rated player, progression is harder, which makes Wagner's progression in Ice and in Stone, when we didn't get promoted, even more credible, similar to Lecoq. But even looking at a player who's rated lower, so progression in theory should be easier in those same conditions that those blue cards have progressed, he has not, despite it being better conditions for someone of his level, his talent level. So why could that be? Maybe it's his underlying potential. Now, if I'd got Tolentino and loaned him out somewhere else and never used him, he wouldn't have improved anyway. And then I wouldn't have had this guy. And then I'd have had to get someone else in to replace him. And then are you any better off? You've not got progression. You've loaned a guy out for 5%. You loan another guy in for 6 or 7 because he seems to be better for now. And, this guy doesn't progress. This guy moves on to another team after you've progressed him. And, so there's that. And then when you think that the Hamada Nasser thing is like set in stone for like, oh yeah, if a guy's like super high potential, playing him down in those low divisions, you're never going to see any progression for them. I will show you my favourite player probably, and that is Danilo Casas. He's only 22. We've got this guy in Season 2. So he was one of our refer a friend kind of links. I think he was one of the last cards that we got unlocked before we got Hamada Nasser. And as you can see, his match ratings are very, very credible. High 7 pluses for a right back is very good. Ever present, main guy in the first team. He's only played at Stone and above, but when he genned into the Stone division as a 77 rated right back, he is firmly like ahead of the level. And over these 2 seasons in Stone and in 1 season in Iron, he's went from being 75 finishing up as 81 rated by the time he's left Stone. Now, 81 rated players are way above the level for Ice, Stone and Iron, I would suggest. And then even in the Iron division, he has continued to improve all the way to being an 83 rated player. And if you look at the statistics he's now carrying and the progression he's had for each and every one of them, his defense is went from 78 to 87. His pace is went from, I guess that's 82 or whatever, up to 89. Shooting's improved a little bit. I don't think we care about that too much. It must be said in pre-season, he's been absolutely hitting balls in at the back post. His passing has went from 75 to, 80? Bit of an improvement for dribbling. And physical, which was already a huge statistic at 85, has went all the way up to, I think it's at 89, 90 now. And look at that overall progression again. So if you're thinking, if my guy's got the potential to be 83, they're never going to realise that in the stone division or, whatever it might be. And as you've seen with like even Lecoq in his early season, going from like green to blue and ice, same as Wagner. And I know it's in stone, so it's a level above, right? And for Casas, essentially, if they're going to get there, if you're playing well and you're winning, there probably will be enough XP to get them there. Will it be absolutely optimal every single time? No. But I think so much is being made of, I've got a guy that's too good, so I can't keep them because they're just not going to progress and I'm not going to get the maximum out of that guy to play for me in the future, or if I want to loan or sell him out into the market, the maximum value I can get. For me, and from what I've seen with all of these players, the number one thing is success. The number one thing is winning matches and having good match performances. Now, I've had, like, with all of these players, a varying quality of best 16 overall average, which dictates, like a lot of the XP that we've seen in the white paper there, of course. But it's not been wild. Maybe for Hamad Nasser because he's been so highly rated. But for the rest of them, they've been like, when did he come in? At 74. I think when Lecoq came in at 74, the rest of my players were averaging between mid to high 60s. So he's like a good 8 points clip above the average, I would think. Less so the case for Wagner, but still like a significant 5 or 6 points ahead, and then he progresses and gets even better than the rest of them. And again, there is guys like Tolentino, and again, the reason I like this guy as an example is because I'm first owner of him, so I really know everything this guy's been up to in terms of the training exposure, the quality of team he's been in, and his actual match performance here, where you could do absolutely everything you want. You could have a guy that's rated 75 and loan him into the perfect team in the perfect spot, but if his overall is 76, going to go up by 1 that season, and you probably think, oh, I could loan him out again, and it might not happen, so I'm always a big fan of, like, especially if it's a first owner card or a card you've packed, like, if they are exceptional and you're ambitious, you've got a strong squad, and you think, I'm going to have a good year this year, use them. They're going to be able to play for more than one season, and you can judge these things as they go. I've enjoyed watching these players all develop very differently over the last 4 seasons, and of course I've taken a different path with Hamada for this year, because I do feel that with the season, the career he's had so far, maybe 1 season on loan now, I don't mind missing out on, because I did not get promoted. And if I got promoted, I would have kept him because he would be moving up levels again. We would have reinforced the squad and it might have been a bit better for him. But I don't want to keep him at stone again, or iron, or whatever. Yeah, we've taken a different path with him, and we'll see how Season 5 pans out for him. But I think with the other 4 examples that we have here, it does show that, it doesn't really matter what level you're at. If the guy has the potential, you will see some growth in them. And if you see that they've got mad growth, like, really, like, for all intents and purposes, Danilo Casas here, if I don't see continued improvement from him this year, and I don't get promoted, I'll probably need to treat him the same way I've treated Hamad Nasser. But there's enough proof in the pudding there where I can see that there's something that would be a smart move to make. Whereas when I look at Tolentino, like, I don't care about this guy's progression anymore, because I don't think he's really got any of it in him. So he's just going to be used utility-wise as I see fit, or if he had no place in the squad, you're just going to loan him now forever and not think about him twice, because progression is just not going to happen. So it's not part of my strategy around this player. The strategy now becomes maxing out MFL percentages on contracts if I'm not going to max them out for utility for the division I'm in or the tactics I'm using. And bearing in mind, the training thing and all the rest of it is based on the best overall 16, okay? Now, some of the top performers I've had in my club, some of these guys I've brought in later, right? But Quintana, Morel's always been away on loan. Casas is pushing the boat, obviously, as we've seen already. But Quintana never really played that much for me. Was outside the top 16 in terms of match rating, but just see being in the squad and being involved in training and playing, like, how many matches did he play for us in his early career? He got all this progression from being 60 to 64 in his first season. He played 7 matches, mainly in the cup, and rotated in the league and ice. The next season he had a little bit of progression after playing 4 matches in the league and 2 in the cup. So again, if guys do have a lot of potential and they're outside that top overall 16, you don't need them to get many minutes as long as they're training in a good environment if they actually have that potential, and you'll see green shoots of progress. Since those green shoots of progress, I've put him out on loan to a team who went on to win the cup, and this year hopefully he can get a full season under his belt rather than half a season like he had last year in season 4, and maybe we can see a little bit more from our top progressor in the club already. But again, if they have the potential, playing every match isn't the be all and end all of absolutely everything around their progression. Sometimes it is, like, quite simply, do they have it in them? And then on top of this, there's a number of other different player ID strategies that I see and hear people deploying when looking at what players to buy, seeing the progression they've had already, imagining, do they have more progression in them? Have they reached peak age? Are they nowhere near peak age? If you look at this page and see that they've not had much progression, and let's scroll down and find a decent example if we can. If you see progression like this or an even flatter line, and then you see that they've not been playing too much, you can then imagine, well, there's still a lot of progression perhaps left on the table, and if I bring this guy into my squad, we could see something happen, and a few other different bits and pieces which we could maybe talk about in another video on another time. But for this one, I wanted to talk about what is actually in the white paper for progression, show some examples of some players I've had progressing and not progressing, and ultimately, like, yeah, what you need to weigh up when you're making these squad management, squad construction decisions. Because for me, ultimately, like I've said a few times, the number one thing is winning. The number one thing is playing well. And it's a game. I want to have fun. I want to see my team scoring goals, winning matches, getting promoted, going to cup finals and semi-finals and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot harder to do that when you don't keep your best players and then you loan in weaker players as a result. Seems quite backwards for the most part for me. I think there's a happy medium to be had here as well. I had a guy that I packed, just as the final note on this, that I was a bit on the fence with what to do because he's a left winger and a centre mid. I don't really have any left wing potential, but he's Scottish. It's my first Scottish packed player, and he's a blue. He's a rare. He's 77 rated. He's 25, so he's maybe got some progression in him. We'll cross our fingers for that one. But his secondary position is central midfield, so we're going to give him a bit of a go. We're going to have a bit of a bash with that. But I think if the position is so different where you don't have the tactics built with, if you've already built the rest of the squad, it's one of the few exceptions to the rule where I think like it just is clearly the decision to make. If you have to break so much to fit them in, it's not going to be worth it. Get them out and think about them for next year. I can get behind that. But if we're talking about centre backs, left backs, strikers, positions you're definitely going to be using no matter what your formation is, especially if you're in Spark or Ice, I'd be using those better guys. I'd be blasting the competition away. I'd be getting promoted and then look to consolidate and make maybe smarter moves as your agency grows, as your club gets stronger into your second season, which would be season 6. But let me know your thoughts and feelings and any kind of progression tales that you've had in your club, for better or for worse, guys you've kept, guys you've loaned out, whatever it might be. On screen there now some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this, of course. Stay out of trouble, and I will catch you on the next one.